Could Ryan Day be fired?
You are Locked On College Football, smothered and covered, with your host, Barrett Sallee. Your one-stop shop for everything college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome back. It is a Monday morning here on College Football, smothered and covered. We're going to have a big show for you today. It is championship week, but there's a lot to get back to after what was one of the best rivalry weekends we've had in a very long time. We're going to talk a little bit about that Friday night fireworks. I'll show you some of the videos and recap some of the wildness from Sanford Stadium. It's Mea Culpa Monday. We're going to talk about Oklahoma State. We're going to talk about Ohio State. We're going to talk about those as well. And then we're going to lobby for a couple of teams to make some big changes for the positive, for the better, and for the worse. The show brought to you by FanDuel. Your first $5 bet gets you $150 in bonus bets guaranteed if you win that $5. That's right. You place a bet for $5. If you win it, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed only at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, Ryan Day, after what happened on Saturday, losing, I would say, inexcusable loss to Michigan, the natural question started to be raised. What do you do with Ryan Day? Because you can't beat Michigan. He can't beat Michigan. He hasn't beaten Michigan since 2019. Okay? What has happened since then? Well, they went to a national championship game in the COVID year, but I wipe away everything during the COVID year. They went to a Peach Bowl national semifinal against Georgia. I think they were the second best team in the country that year, but they lost. And Georgia went on to the national championship in very emphatic fashion. So there are positives, right? There could be positives this year. Ohio State's going to go to the college football playoff. They're going to play a first-round game. It might even be in Columbus. What happens if they lose? Could they fire Ryan Day? I think the answer is yes. I think after that Michigan game, you started to have rumblings as to what do we do now? And I've heard a little bit about that firsthand. But the season isn't over yet. There's a national championship that could be won. Ohio State's talented enough to win said national championship. They certainly have the resources, and they have one of the best rosters that money can buy. So Ohio State can still win that national championship. But there's a mantra out there. There's an idea out there, and I think it's valid, that Ryan Day is not a big game coach. That's fair. That's fair. So what do you do? What do you do if you're Ohio State? You couldn't fire Ryan Day yesterday. Again, national championship hanging out there. What if they lose? What if they lose a first-round game, especially at home? Can you fire Ryan Day at that point? After making the college football playoff? The answer is yes. And I think they probably should. And I think they will if that happens. If you go beyond that, if Ohio State goes to one of the bowl game quarterfinals or beyond to a semifinal or national championship game, perhaps winning it, you keep him around. But here's the thing. It all goes back to mindset of the decision makers. Okay? There are older folks, and I think it's a generation thing. There are older folks where the rivalry is the only thing that matters. The only thing that matters. But there are, I think, younger folks, and there's money coming in on both sides. The younger generation of boosters, influencers, administrators think that the national championship is the most important thing. Personally, I can see both sides. But that's the conundrum Ohio State finds itself in. What do you do? How do you appease both sides? And there's no answer. There's no answer to this. This is a unique situation. that I don't think any administration has ever been in. You throw in NIL and a roster that people have referred to as the best roster that money can buy. I did that on SiriusXM on Sunday. I think it's true. So you have that curveball thrown in there as well. So what do I think will happen? I think Ryan Day gets fired if they lose a first-round game. I don't care if it's at home or if it's away. I don't care who it's to. I don't care how it looks. I think Ryan Day gets fired if they lose a first-round matchup. I think it's fine that he's there right now. He should not have been fired on Sunday. Yes, losing to Michigan is embarrassing, especially that Michigan team, especially the way that Michigan team played, because basically they were saying, here it is, take the win on a silver platter, Buckeyes, and they didn't do it. That's inexcusable. But losing in the first round of the playoffs is also inexcusable. So you'd have both sides mad. You'd have, well, they're mad now, but you'd have both sides with ammunition. You can't beat Michigan and you can't win the national championship. You can't even perform in the first round of the national championship. It would, in my mind, solidify on both sides of this discussion that Ryan Day is not a big game coach. So then the question is, who do you go get? Who do you go get? There aren't many people out there who would, in my mind, immediately appease that fan base. NFL coaches are not going to come back to college. They're just not. You saw this weekend, Gus Malzahn resigns as the head coach of UCF to go be the offensive coordinator at a 2-10 Florida State team. There are a lot of people who don't want to deal with this nonsense. Jeff Hafley did this last year. You're not going to get an NFL coach. It just ain't happening. So are you going to go raid somebody else? Sure, you can. It's going to be hard to convince somebody that it's national championship or bust. It really is. Now, there will be people who take that challenge, that welcome that challenge. Somebody like Rhett Lashley, I think would be a very good fit, although you're going to have to give a lot of money to him in order to get him to Columbus. Curt Cignetti, you're going to go pay that buyout? Maybe. But it's a hard job, man. It's a hard job. And if Ryan Day gets fired after the first round of the playoffs, it's going to be an interesting coaching search in Columbus. All right. Everyone wants to talk about the playoff. And you guys know my theory on the playoff and my opinion on the playoff. I made a political stance. I don't like it. I was wrong, so I'm supporting the party being the sport of college football. So now basically, in my mind anyway, barring a curveball, whether that be most likely if it's Clemson winning the ACC championship, there will be some changes. But essentially right now it comes down to that last spot, which would be number 11 because the Big 12 would take that number 12 spot. Alabama, South Carolina, Miami, Ole Miss, right? It should be South Carolina. As of right this very second, South Carolina should be the team with the last spot in the college football playoff. And I know what you're going to say. Well, head-to-head to Alabama, head-to-head to Ole Miss. Those are valid arguments, very valid arguments. But the committee last year set the precedent that injuries matter. And an injury to a quarterback matters in a massive, massive way. It's not the same thing as Trey Harris against Ole Miss. It's just for Ole Miss. It's just not. So what happened in the LSU game? Lenore Sellers was absolutely balling out. And then he didn't come back for the second half. South Carolina loses that game. Would they have won with Lenore Sellers? Abso-freaking-lutely. And that would change their overall record. And wins and losses matter. The coaches and players on that committee will tell you that. So that's why South Carolina should be in the college football playoff. Alabama fans, Ole Miss fans, I get it. You have valid arguments as well. But I can tell you one thing, Miami does not. I don't care that their record is better than all three of these teams. There's a glaring flaw. It was not fixed. And they also lost the game control battle almost every single week. And game control matters. We can argue whether it does or not in the minds of the individual, but it matters to the people in that committee room. Now, devil's advocate. How does Miami get in? I think it's pretty simple. We can talk about the Georgia Tech thing, and we'll talk about the Georgia Tech game later. But Syracuse is going to be ranked. And I know what you're going to say. Well, Syracuse just beat Miami. Well, that's exactly the point. People got wind and sort of realized, hey, you know what? Kyle McCord's kind of a badass, and Syracuse is actually pretty good. And their record bears it out. So they're going to be ranked. And they should be. In the committee room, that's what matters most. If you have a number next to your name, that matters in a huge, huge way. And Syracuse is going to have one, which will make Miami's loss to Syracuse a little bit more tolerable. They lost the game control battle again, but it was to a pretty good team. That's in their mind. If that team was ranked number 26th, would be a totally different story. We can argue whether that's the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. It is the wrong thing to do, but it's how it's done. So that's the case for Miami. Again, that's devil's advocate. But if we're talking about the three SEC teams, yes, I know South Carolina lost to both, but quarterback matters more than anybody else. Their starting quarterback, who is a flat-out stud and was a stud in the first half against LSU, didn't get to finish that game off. So that's why South Carolina, in my mind, should be in the college football playoff. We're going to take a break. When we come back, it's Mea Culpa Monday. You're listening to and you are watching College Football Smothered and Covered, powered by the Locked On Podcast Network. Today's show brought to you by FanDuel. You know how this goes now. A $5 bet. If you win it, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. And with championship weekend coming up, with the NFL season in full swing, you need to get on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, you know what? If you get a hunch in the middle of a game, right? If you get a hunch in the middle of a game, say last night when Buffalo was absolutely terrorizing in the snow, you might want to make a bet, right? You might think, you know what? Maybe, just maybe, Josh Allen is going to go nuts in the second half through the air. Maybe the snow's not going to bother him at all. You know, you can make that bet. All of those numbers are right there on the same page, in which you get your live play-by-play, your free stats, all of it there. You can make a bet. Visit FanDuel.com today. Again, your first $5 bet. If you win it, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, it is Mea Culpa Monday. We're going to go with two items in Mea Culpa Monday. We've already talked about Ohio State, so I'll go briefly with Ohio State and Mea Culpa Monday. What was that? Will Howard, buddy, I didn't like you going in to the season. In fact, I even said when you transferred to Ohio State that you were basically Kyle McCord with just a different body and a different face. I was wrong, because Kyle McCord's way better than you. That was one of the most embarrassing offensive performances, most confusing offensive performances that we've seen in a long time. This is Michigan. And yet, generally, they have a good defense. They're missing their two of their best players. And you can't move the ball at all? Chip Kelly can't make an adjustment and maybe not run right into the teeth of that defense? That's embarrassing. That coaching staff, I thought, was better. We talked about Ryan Day, but I'm talking about the offensive coaching staff led by Chip Kelly. That was embarrassing. And Will Howard showed that he's not a big game quarterback. Because in the two big games that they had, two of the biggest games they've had, I'd say they have three biggest games because the Indiana game counts too. Will Howard has been the scapegoat. Certainly was against Michigan. And look, he had a decent game against Oregon, but he slid 1 second too late. That matters a lot. That's the clutch gene. Didn't have it. So, Ohio State, man, I was wrong about you. I said on Twitter that there's a lot of talk about SEC power and big. Look, the conference power thing is always popping up this time of year, pops up in the offseason too, whatever. But I said on X that there are only two elite teams this year, Oregon and Ohio State, and then everybody else is flawed, including the SEC. There are just more slightly above average flawed teams than there are in the Big Ten. I was wrong because there aren't two elite teams in the country. There's only one. I thought it was Ohio State. I was wrong. I apologize. All right. The next one in Mea Culpa Monday, and I think this kind of gets lost in the weeds, and maybe it's because of Florida State and how bad that team was. But Oklahoma State, going back to the beginning of the season, veteran quarterback, completely intact offensive line, best player in the country in Ollie Gordon second, veteran-laden defense. These are all things we thought about Oklahoma State, right? It's why I put them in the playoff as the number 4 seed, winning the Big 12. That's why a lot of people had them in the playoff as a 3 or a 4 seed, winning the Big 12. You go 3-9. Mike Gundy goes 3-9 with all of that. And look, injuries, they happen. I get it. But for the last 2/3 of the season, that was an absolutely dreadful football team. And it came to a head in the shutout loss to Colorado on Friday afternoon. That can't happen. This was a Mike Gundy special. This was set up for one of those runs for Oklahoma State into the playoff and maybe the national championship game. Certainly they could have run deep in the playoff because they had the best player in college football going into the season. If it wasn't for Florida State, Oklahoma State would be the butt of every single joke. So Mike Gundy, you better send a gift basket to Mike Norvell this Christmas season because he did you a solid. Man, Oklahoma. I don't even feel bad about, I feel it's Mea Culpa Monday. So of course I'm going to tell you how wrong I am about things. But I think everybody was wrong about Oklahoma State. That was an abject disaster. When we come back, story time from Friday night in Athens. It's Locked On College Football Smothered and Covered. We'll be right back. Show brought to you by our good friends at Gametime. They are the premier website in buying tickets. Why? Because they tell you the price up front, all-in pricing right out of the gate. There's no hidden fees. I hate hidden fees. Gametime, they don't have it. Plus, they have Gametime Picks. It shows you the best values on tickets whenever you'll want to make the purchase. Last-minute deals on tickets right up to the start of the event. And this is the key. This is a trick. This is a hack. Even after it starts, for an hour after it starts. They have exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. They have zone deals where you pick the section and Gametime picks the seats. for big, big savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That's right, terms apply. Create an account, spelled Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, story time from Athens. I was at the Georgia Tech game. They let us on the field with 5 minutes to go, and I guarantee you I ran about 1.5 miles, 2 miles. My Apple Watch died, but I'd love to know the stats on that. It was one of the wildest events I've ever been to. I've been to a lot of them. I was at the Kick Six. I was at the national championship game for Alabama and Georgia, the walk-off, the Keely Ringo pick six for Georgia when they won it. I've been at a lot of great games. I've never been in an 8 overtime game on the field. It was awesome. So before we get into some more fun stories, here is my view. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever, you can see it. If you're listening, go check it out on YouTube. This is my view of the final play. I thought it was going to come to me. Here we go. Nate Frazier in there. And the chaos that ensues. You don't see it necessarily in this video, but I tell you, Georgia fans, you've witnessed some trash throwing. I didn't have to avoid you. But I know it's Georgia Tech. But after what went down that day, those players deserve everything. They deserve to have this celebration. And then afterwards, right there, you can see it on YouTube. And if you are listening, you can see it on my X page as well. Brent Key and Kirby Smart sharing a moment. I tell you, like, I've been at a lot of handshakes. That one lasted about a minute. And Brent Key was as emotional as I've seen a coach. And I think it's pretty obvious why. And he's been on this show. So those of you who go back before the season, you can see it. He has a deep, deep passion for Georgia Tech. Went there, played there, obviously is now the head coach, has built that program into one that is very competitive in the ACC and clearly can compete with the best of the best in the SEC. It matters to him. And his hatred for Georgia is real. And that's why Kirby Smart respected him. And that's why they shared that long embrace. And I think it shows that Georgia Tech is back and that Brent Key is the guy to bring them back. And leaving that field, I looked at the 50-yard line, and there's Brent Key just standing there by himself watching the celebration. Now, we've seen that before with some players and some coaches. I think a lot of times it's contrived. It wasn't contrived. And Georgia Tech is in great hands. They should have won that football game. I don't know ifs, ands, or buts or whatever, but Buster Faulkner, their offensive coordinator, put together a phenomenal game plan. Really, since Haynes King got hurt, he's putting together incredible game plans, one after the other after the other. So he stuck with Haynes King. He knew Haynes King could be a warrior. He didn't need Aaron Philo, who incidentally now can redshirt. There was nothing Georgia could do. Nothing with Haynes King. And then in the overtime, they started passing. They started, rolling him out and letting him rip. Now, granted, it worked at times, but dude, just run the football. I don't care that Haynes King is tired. Haynes King knows that Haynes King is tired. Georgia Tech should have won that game. And incidentally, going back to the playoff, had Georgia Tech won that game, that would boost Miami's chances. But that's a whole different story. But what a game. I've never been at a game like that. What was really funny, going back to it, to some of the stories, was, we go back and forth because in the overtime, they swap sides every single overtime. So I was on the Georgia Tech sideline, and finally, all the players and coaches are laughing at us. About the fourth overtime, they just open up their sideline. Y'all just run through here. Like, don't care. Just run through here. So we're running through the Georgia Tech sideline while they're preparing game plans, and we were respectful. But in the sixth or seventh overtime, I was near the 20-yard line where the bench ends and the spots that we can stand, begin. And a Georgia Tech player, I don't know who he is, really tall, skinny guy. He might have been a special teamer, snapper, somebody, leans over to me and goes, "Damn, dude, y'all are in better shape than we are." And I kind of laughed. And it's like, yeah, this is fun, right? And he leans over and goes, "This is awesome." And it was. Look, it's a game. They enjoyed it. We enjoyed it. It was awesome. Last thing before we head out of here. Tom Luganville and I on SiriusXM on Sunday, we always have a gateway question, a password where fans calling in have to answer it before joining us and having a conversation with us. And on Sunday, it was say something nice about your rival. And I'm going to share a couple because it's a happy game. It's sports. It's supposed to be fun. I wrote down a couple that I thought were very funny. Notre Dame fans, 2 Notre Dame fans had this one, that USC's fight song slaps. And it does. It does. Another Michigan fan called in and said, "The song girls, the cheerleaders, 2 thumbs up." Also true. Luke, one of the guy who runs, Luke is the podcast host for our Bama show here on Locked On. He called in and said, "You know what? Alabama's great, but Auburn has a fantastic restaurant scene." And it does. Acre, phenomenal. That place is one of the best restaurants you'll ever go to. And of course, a staple is Amsterdam's. When I was there, that was where we took dates with girls. When we didn't just go out and party, it was like, "Oh, you want to go on a real date? We'll go to Amsterdam's." So that place is fantastic. We had a couple of Penn State fans call in, talk about the restaurant scene near Pitt, and also that the logo, the Pitt script logo, is one of the best in college football. And it is. It absolutely is. So those were some fun things. Look, we're supposed to have fun in the sport. We did that on SiriusXM. That was the question we had, and really loved you guys calling in and telling us what you like about your rival, because it's not really hate. It's hate for 60 minutes. You really do like some of these things. And plus you like college football. So that was fun too. Hey, thank you for making this your first listen. For your second listen, go check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. We also have the conference channels. They do a great job over there. So go check those out. You can also sign up for the subtext group. I'll be here in Atlanta covering the SEC championship game. So we'll have cool things to share with the subtext group throughout the course of 2 days, Friday afternoon, and then also Saturday during the game. Until Tuesday, have a great day, everybody. We will talk to you soon.